If you take a look back to the very beginning of One Piece, Zoro seems like an entirely different character. Often, there are scenes of him laughing hysterically at Luffy, like when he was sailing in a tiny raft, had to do dishes at the Baratier, or even being drowned by Nami. But now, when you see Zoro, it's as if he doesn't have the ability to laugh anymore at all. It feels like now he's 100% serious at all times. So how did something that used to be such a large part of his character get changed to where post and pre-time skip Zoro feel like two different characters? While all of the Straw Hats grew dramatically during their 2 years of training, Zoro by far changed the most. Sure, Frankie looks the most different and Usopp got jacked. Robin lost her bangs. Please bring them back, Oda. But Zoro changed in a much deeper way. The only time you see Zoro smiling or laughing is when he's about to go all out in a fight. It's hard to pinpoint this change to just a single day or one chapter in the series, but there are 3 distinct moments throughout the series that are the most impactful to Zoro's character changing. The third and final reason by far contributes the most to Zoro's character development. But in order to understand why this moment was so important to his character development, we have to first take a look at the initial 2 moments leading up to his breaking point. If you missed the old Zoro, be sure to gum smash that like button, or if you like the new Zoro better, let me know why down in the comments, and let's talk about how Zoro was changed forever. The first moment altering Zoro was after he lost to Mihawk and almost died. Many of you probably already guessed this as one of the reasons why, but the reason behind it is a little less obvious. Before losing to Mihawk, Zoro was making a name for himself in the East Blue as the pirate hunter. Zoro was defeating pirates and other swordsmen in the East Blue with ease, all to become stronger himself and one day claim the title as the world's strongest swordsman. Nothing stood in his way and he hardly ever faced a challenge. Quickly, he developed an ego. Until he faced Mihawk. It was easy for Zoro to feel like he was getting closer to achieving his dream. With the greatest swordsman now standing before him, all he had to do was win. But Zoro lost so terribly, his worldview had to change. Mihawk proved just how massive the gap between them was. Without even using his sword and instead using a tiny blade hanging around his neck, Mihawk embarrassed Zoro. If losing to someone who doesn't even take you seriously enough to wield their own weapon wasn't bad enough, Zoro now had to face an uncomfortable truth. He was nowhere near achieving his dream. The world was no longer a place he could progress without challenge, and in order to get stronger, he had to get much more serious. But while this definitely contributed to Zoro changing into the cold version we are familiar with post-time skip, he still didn't act all that different after Mihawk. There are plenty of moments with Zoro smiling along with the rest of the crew, but throughout the next few arcs, this would become less and less common to see, despite Zoro getting drastically stronger. Getting closer to achieving his dream, you would think should do the opposite and make him loosen up, but the reason behind this slow change throughout the early arcs has absolutely nothing to do with losing a fight or feeling too weak to achieve his dream. It is the core reason behind why the next 2 moments change Zoro so much. It's Zoro's relationship with Luffy. When they first met, Luffy was just a weird, stretchy kid who stumbled into Zoro's life. Luffy did weird things that made Zoro laugh because, let's face it, Luffy's kind of stupid. And when Luffy would do these dumb things putting himself in danger, Zoro would laugh. What does Zoro care if Luffy ends up hurting himself or dying? They just met. But the longer they sail together, the closer Luffy and Zoro become. All of a sudden, this goofy rubber kid means something to Zoro. It's harder to be at ease when your now best friend is constantly putting himself in unnecessary danger. Which is why when Zoro lost to Kuma, it was so much more impactful to changing his character than losing to Mihawk. It wasn't about almost losing his own life for Zoro, it was about almost losing the life of someone else he cared about. I'm sure everyone saw the end of the Thriller Bark arc coming as one of the reasons behind his change. As one of the most iconic moments in the series, it highlights Zoro taking the role of the crew's bigger brother. After everyone exhausted themselves fighting Moria, no one had any more energy to fight. Luffy had passed out, but Zoro was fighting to the very end to protect his friends. It all proved futile in the end, and Zoro was left with no option but to beg Kuma and take his life instead of Luffy's. The reason this moment of Zoro taking on the burden of Luffy's pain to save the rest of the crew is so important is because it highlights one of the most important themes in One Piece. It's the same reason Kuma chose to spare Luffy that day. It's friendship. Kuma had absolutely no reason to spare Luffy, Zoro, or any of the other Straw Hats. He was tasked with taking Luffy's life, but after witnessing how Zoro was willing to give up on his own dreams by sacrificing his life to save Luffy, Kuma was amazed by such an act of friendship. This moment truly indicates how much Zoro had bonded with Luffy. Up to that point, everything Zoro did was in pursuit of his own dream of becoming the greatest swordsman. He never intended to give up on that dream because that would be breaking his promise to Kuina. But here he is, following the orders of somebody else as a pirate and now giving up on everything for the sake of Luffy. This is what stood out to Kuma so much. This moment would change Zoro permanently because for the very first time in his life, someone else's dream was his priority. Now adding to the burden of Zoro's responsibilities. Now he must get stronger not only for himself, but for Luffy. It's easy to see why Zoro seems as though he matured much faster than the others. Yet there's still one more moment in One Piece that changed Zoro far more than any other moment. But before I reveal the final reason, don't forget to drop a like on this video and go follow me on Twitter. Link in the description down below. The final reason and breaking point for Zoro is when Ace died, causing him to beg Mihawk and make him stronger. But why is this moment so much more important when both of the first two reasons Zoro was defeated inches away from death? Well, you see, this final reason has nothing to do with almost losing. Sure, he did lose terribly in Sabaody, but it was what happened as a result of him losing that did the damage. This time, after fighting his heart out, he had to watch those closest to him be erased by Kuma. Then 2 days later, being left stranded on an island, incapable to help Luffy save his brother Ace. This is the first time someone close to Zoro lost their life as a result of not being strong enough, causing Zoro to have to shift his entire attitude in response. After being sent to Mihawk's island, Zoro set aside his own dream once again, begging the very person standing in the way of achieving that dream to train him, not so that he could be Mihawk, but to become strong enough to support Luffy in his dream of becoming the Pirate King. The first time someone else's dream was what drove Zoro to become stronger. Thriller Bark was the first time he prioritized someone else's dream by sacrificing his life for Luffy. But now, it's deeper than that. Not only is he willing to give up on his own dream, he's willing to do anything it takes to ensure Luffy becomes the Pirate King, even if it means begging the man he swears to defeat for training. Now that you know everything that caused Zoro to change, all that's left to talk about is how much he changed. Despite you hardly ever seeing Zoro laugh along with the crew, you can still find moments of him smiling along to the side. But still, his attitude is completely different. It's more as though he's the big brother of the crew. You can tell he's proud of the friends he made along the way, but when it comes down to it, he's there to protect his goofy friends. Let me know what you think of Zoro's development down in the comments below, and go check out my last video on why Gold Roger is stronger than you think. So yeah, bye.